Tonight, we're not discussing a discovery. We're discussing a moment when the universe, after billions of years of silence, after countless nights of humanity listening to the void with hope and desperation, finally spoke back. And what it said has changed everything. On October 14th, 2024, at 3:47 UTC, the interstellar object designated 3I/ATLAS emitted a structured radio transmission on the 1420 MHz hydrogen line, a frequency so fundamental to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence that it's been called the cosmic water cooler, the place where civilizations gather to talk. The transmission wasn't noise. It wasn't random interference or the echo of some distant pulsar. It was a deliberate pattern. Fibonacci pulses, 8, 13, 8, 51, 38, repeating with unnerving precision, cycling every 127 seconds, as if the object itself were breathing. Let me be clear about what this means. Natural objects don't broadcast mathematical sequences. Comets don't whisper numbers into the dark. Ice and rock, no matter how ancient, no matter how far they've traveled, remain silent. They obey the laws of physics, chemistry, thermodynamics. They don't communicate. But 3I/ATLAS does. For decades, SETI has listened. For decades, we've wondered if we were alone, if intelligence was rare or common, if anyone out there cared that we existed. We built instruments to hear a whisper across light years. We dreamed of first contact as a moment of wonder, of validation, of cosmic kinship. We never imagined it would feel like being watched. The signal from 3I/ATLAS isn't an invitation. It's not hello. It's something far more unsettling. Recognition. The universe has seen us. It has taken note. And in that acknowledgement lies a terror we're only beginning to understand. What kind of intelligence sends such minimal data? Just numbers, just patterns. Why through a passing object, a nomad from another star system? Is it observing us, cataloging us, testing whether we're capable of understanding? Or is the message itself secondary to something larger, something we haven't yet grasped? For the first time in human history, the sky is no longer silent, and we're not sure we're ready for what it has to say. Let's establish what we know, the facts before the fear. 3I/ATLAS, officially designated C/2024 S1ATLAS, became the third confirmed interstellar visitor to our solar system when astronomers detected it in September 2024. After Oumuamua in 2017 and 2I/Borisov in 2019, we thought we understood what these objects were: cosmic refugees, chunks of ice and rock ejected from distant star systems, wandering the galaxy for millions of years. 3I/ATLAS fit that profile. Initially, its hyperbolic orbit, clocking at 34 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, proved conclusively it wasn't gravitationally bound to our system. It came from elsewhere, from the dark between stars. But the similarities ended there. Its composition was wrong. Spectroscopic analysis revealed unusual ratios of carbon dioxide to water ice, nearly 4-to-1, far exceeding any known comet. It outgassed cyanide, which isn't rare, but also atomic nickel without corresponding iron vapor. That's abnormal. Nickel and iron travel together in cosmic chemistry. Separating them requires specific conditions we don't see in natural astrophysical processes. Then there was its behavior. Brightness fluctuations suggested rotation, but the pattern was inconsistent. A natural tumbling object produces predictable light curves. 3I/ATLAS didn't. Its luminosity spiked irregularly, sometimes dimming when it should brighten, as if internal systems were activating, drawing power, redistributing energy. Scientists tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's venting gas asymmetrically. Maybe the nucleus is fragmented. Maybe it's just a rock with attitude. That was the joke in the astronomy community, a rock with attitude. Researchers laughed about it in emails, in conference calls, in the break rooms of observatories. Then the transmission began and the laughter stopped. Because if 3I/ATLAS were merely ice, merely rock, merely the cosmic debris we'd come to expect, we wouldn't be afraid. We'd be curious, excited, eager to study another interstellar wanderer. But ice doesn't whisper numbers, rock doesn't choose the hydrogen line, and natural objects don't wake up as they approach a star and decide to speak. Picture this, a glinting speck against the void, accelerating ever so slightly, not from solar radiation pressure alone, but as if adjusting course, as if aware it had been seen. Telescopes worldwide locked onto it, tracking its path with obsessive precision. And somewhere in that network of lenses and receivers, in the hum of data flowing through fiber optic cables, in the algorithms sifting through petabytes of observations, the realization dawned. This wasn't just an object. This was a visitor. The night of October 14th was routine at the European Southern Observatory's La Silla facility, until it wasn't. Two technicians were calibrating solar wind instruments, preparing for the next day's observations. Standard work, boring work, the kind that requires attention but not thought. Then, at 3:47 UTC, a repeating pulse appeared on their monitors. At first, they assumed interference. Cell towers, satellites, even microwave ovens can create spurious signals. But this was different. The frequency was too precise, 1420.40575 megahertz, matching the neutral hydrogen line to 6 decimal places. And it pulsed in patterns. Discrete bursts separated by intervals of 8, 13, 8, 51, 38 seconds. They checked the equipment, restarted systems, ran diagnostics. The signal persisted. Then confirmation arrived from Arecibo's successor array in Puerto Rico. Then NASA's Deep Space Network in California. Then the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope in China. The signal was real. It was extraterrestrial, and its source was 3I/ATLAS. Within hours, the control rooms at SETI and NASA were silent except for the click of keyboards and the hum of cooling fans. Scientists don't speak when confronted with the impossible. They verify, cross-reference, eliminate alternatives. But elimination has limits, and when every natural explanation fails, what remains, however improbable, must be true. The pulse pattern repeated every 127 seconds. The intervals, 8, 13, 8, 51, 38. Someone noticed it. The first 4 numbers approximated Fibonacci increments. Not exact, but close enough to signal intent. Close enough to say, this is not noise, this is language. By October 16th, encrypted forums had leaked the waveform. Amateur radio enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists downloaded the raw data and began their own analyses. When someone slowed the pulses to audio frequencies and played them through speakers, listeners described it as a whispering voice, almost human, almost comprehensible, a susurration that seemed to form syllables without quite becoming words. The psychological effect was immediate and disturbing. People reported chills, insomnia, a sense of being observed. Some claimed the pattern resonated with their heartbeat, that listening to it created a feedback loop between the signal and their own biological rhythms. Neurologists dismissed this as pareidolia, the brain-finding patterns where none exist, but the reports kept coming. Researchers who spent hours analyzing the transmission began to describe a sensation they struggled to articulate: recognition without understanding. As if the signal were designed to interface with human cognition, to sit just beyond the threshold of meaning, close enough to feel significant but far enough to remain mysterious. One engineer at JPL described it this way: it's like remembering a dream. You know something important happened, something you need to understand, but the details slip away when you reach for them. Except this isn't a dream. This is real, and it's still broadcasting. The signal wasn't just data. It was an experience. And it changed everyone who listened. The moment a signal is confirmed, the race to decode it begins. Teams at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the SETI Institute, MIT's Haystack Observatory, and dozens of other facilities worldwide initiated parallel decoding efforts. They ran the transmission through deep learning neural networks trained on human languages, mathematical structures, musical patterns. They analyzed frequency modulation, amplitude variation, polarization shifts. They looked for redundancy, error correction, nested information. What they found was both beautiful and terrifying. When mapped into 3-dimensional space using Fourier transforms, the signal resolved into a spiraling helix, a rotating geometry of light and sound that twisted through multiple axes. It was elegant, almost organic, like DNA rendered in mathematics. Within the harmonics, prime numbers appeared. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, the building blocks of mathematics, universally recognizable to any intelligence capable of arithmetic. The primes weren't random, they formed markers, punctuation in a larger grammar. Then, buried in the signal's substructure, linguists identified something extraordinary: 3 distinct phonemes that approximated human vocal syllables. The sounds weren't exact, but they were close enough to trigger recognition in the auditory cortex. When synthesized through speech software, they formed a phrase, or something like a phrase. The cycle resets. 3 words, repeated with increasing frequency as 3I/ATLAS approached perihelion, its closest point to the sun. Interpretation fractured into chaos. Some researchers called it cosmic poetry, a statement about the nature of time, entropy, the rebirth of stars. Others heard it as something darker, a countdown, a warning, an announcement that something was ending or beginning, and we were caught in the transition. Governments classified the findings. Public statements described the signal as unusual natural phenomena pending further study. But the truth leaked, as truth always does, and the internet exploded with amateur decodings. YouTube filled with videos claiming to hear additional phrases: "They are coming," "Do not answer," "Witness." Some enhanced the audio and claimed to detect background sounds, machinery, breathing, footsteps in vast spaces. Most were artifacts of processing, the human brain's desperate need to find meaning in static. But some weren't easily explained. I spoke with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a linguist at Berkeley who'd spent 200 hours analyzing the transmission. Her hands shook as she described it. "We're trained to be objective," she said, "to separate signal from interpretation. But it's designed to be felt as much as understood. The frequency modulation creates standing waves in human tissue. It's not just sound, it's vibration at a scale that interacts with our cellular structure. When I listen, I don't just hear it. I feel it resonate in my chest, my skull, and for just a moment, I understand something I can't put into words. Then it's gone." She paused, staring at her monitor where the waveform scrolled endlessly. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." An engineer in Houston told me he saw the spiraling helix pattern in his dreams now, that when he closed his eyes, the geometry was there, rotating, persistent, waiting. The message had entered our minds, and we didn't know how to get it out. As the signal captivated scientists, others focused on the object itself. High-resolution imaging from ground-based telescopes and the Hubble Space Telescope revealed 3I/ATLAS's surface in unprecedented detail. What they saw challenged every assumption about cometary structure. The object was approximately 600 meters in diameter, shaped like an irregular ellipsoid, not unusual for a comet. But its surface was a patchwork of contradictions. Regions of jagged, crystalline ice alternated with smooth, metallic planes that reflected sunlight with mirror-like precision. Those planes weren't natural. Erosion, impacts, sublimation, they create rough textures, not geometric perfection. Radar mapping from the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex revealed something even stranger. The smooth regions were arranged in parallel ridges whose spacing matched the pulse timing of the transmission. Ridge separation: 8.2, 2, 13.1, 8.3, 51.7, 38.4 meters. The body itself was the antenna. Its physical structure encoded the message. Isotope analysis of the outgassed material suggested an age of 4.6 billion years, older than Earth, older than the solar system's formation. If accurate, 3I/ATLAS had been traveling through the galaxy since before our planet existed. A time capsule launched into the void when Earth was still a swirling disk of dust and gas. If it still broadcasts, Dr. Raymond Chen from Caltech noted in a classified briefing, its builders may still be listening. We have to consider the possibility that this isn't a relic, it's infrastructure. The implication hung in the air. 3I/ATLAS might not be alone. Public mythology moved faster than science. Media outlets branded it the Atlas Key, implying it unlocked some cosmic door. Hashtags trended. Hashtag the key arrives, hashtag cosmic contact, hashtag we are not alone. Religions fractured along predictable lines, some declaring it divine revelation, others demonic deception. Philosophers debated its meaning on cable news. Artists created installations inspired by the signal. Musicians transposed the pulses into symphonies that sold out concert halls. But beneath the cultural frenzy, a deeper fear grew, because the real terror wasn't the message, it was the mind behind it. As 3I/ATLAS continued its approach toward the sun, the transmission evolved. At 0.3 astronomical units, roughly 45 million kilometers from the solar surface, the signal's intensity increased by a factor of 3. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if responding to a threshold. Then a secondary harmonic appeared, a higher frequency signal modulated by solar radiation levels. The object was reacting to its environment. Dr. Sarah Kim, an astrophysicist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center, led the analysis. The modulation tracks solar magnetic flux in real time, she explained. When a solar flare erupts, the signal adjusts within 200 milliseconds. That's not passive reflection, it's active calibration. The object is behaving like a sensor. 200 milliseconds. The same reaction time as human reflexes. The precision wasn't coincidental. Every adjustment, every modulation seemed designed to mirror biological timing, as if the probe, and by now everyone was calling it a probe, had been engineered with organic consciousness in mind. It's not just broadcasting, Kim concluded in her report. It's perceiving. Global unease crystallized into something sharper. Exposure. For decades, we'd pointed instruments at the sky, thinking ourselves hidden behind the vastness of space. We were observers, safe in our anonymity. But 3I/ATLAS changed that calculus. If it could detect solar flares in real time, it could certainly detect our transmissions. Radio, television, radar. Every signal humanity had ever emitted was visible to something with sensors sophisticated enough to map magnetic fields from millions of kilometers away. Discovery had always felt like unveiling a secret. Now it felt like being seen. In control rooms worldwide, scientists made an unconscious change. They began whispering, as if the act of speaking might draw attention. Keyboards clicked more softly. Footsteps became careful. The psychological shift was subtle but unmistakable. We'd gone from hunters to prey, or perhaps from children to something being studied by adults. The Watcher had noticed the Watchers, and we didn't know what it would do with that knowledge. Behind closed doors, world agencies convened emergency sessions. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs hosted a classified briefing on October 22nd. Representatives from NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, ISRO, and JAXA attended, along with SETI leadership and military advisors. The question was deceptively simple. Should we respond? The room split immediately. One camp, led by veteran SETI scientists, argued for contact. "We've waited 60 years to hear this," Dr. Marcus Webb stated. "Our entire mission is predicated on finding intelligence and initiating dialogue. If we remain silent now, we admit we're not ready for the universe we've always claimed to want." The counter-argument was existential. "We know nothing about the intelligence behind this signal," a Department of Defense analyst responded. "We don't know its intentions, capabilities, or location. Broadcasting our presence broadly could endanger the entire species." The dark forest hypothesis suggests silence is survival. The debate spiraled into philosophy, game theory, history. Some cited the conquistadors, how first contact between technological disparities ended for indigenous populations. Others invoked the imperative of knowledge, the moral obligation to engage with discovery rather than hide from it. Then an analyst from NOAA presented new data. The transmission had developed a sideband frequency synchronized to Earth's rotation, an 86,400-second cycle, exactly one Earth day. The modulation wasn't approximate, it was precise to the millisecond, adjusting for Earth's rotational deceleration. The probe had locked onto the third planet's rhythm. Silence filled the conference room. "It's already observing us," someone said quietly. "The question isn't whether to make contact. Contact has happened. The question is whether to acknowledge it." But even acknowledgement carried risks. A response would confirm intelligence, strategic thinking, technology. It would transform us from background noise to active participants in whatever process the probe represented. The session ended without consensus. Governments issued statements about continued observation and international cooperation. But privately, nations began defensive measures, hardening satellite communications, developing protocols for electromagnetic silence, moving critical infrastructure offline. Because the truth, unspoken but understood, was this: we'd crossed an invisible line. The universe had rules we didn't know, and we'd just triggered one. Whether by design or accident, by listening to the signal, by analyzing it, by allowing it into our instruments and our minds, we'd entered a game already in progress, and we didn't know how to play. The signal changed again on October 28th. The Fibonacci sequence ceased. In its place, prime numbers, transmitted in ascending order: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23. Pure mathematics, universal proof of intellect. But more than that, communication designed to demonstrate increasing sophistication. The probe was escalating, teaching us its language by building complexity step by step. First patterns, then primes, then what? Cultural transformation accelerated. Governments, previously competitive, began unprecedented cooperation. Data sharing became standard. Universities created new departments: interstellar semiotics, xenolinguistic studies, contact protocol engineering. Graduate students who'd planned careers in traditional fields pivoted toward the greatest intellectual challenge in human history. Artists transformed the pulses into symphonies performed at Carnegie Hall and the Sydney Opera House. They called these works the music of another mind, compositions that blended human emotion with alien mathematics. Audiences sat in darkened concert halls as the patterns washed over them, experiencing something beyond art, a connection to otherness, mediated through sound. But fear grew alongside fascination. Cybersecurity experts noticed the transmission's modulation resembled error-correcting code, the kind used in data transmission to ensure accuracy, which meant the signal might not just convey information, it might be information, executable information, data that could, theoretically, interact with sufficiently advanced systems. The possibility of an alien computer virus haunted network security teams. What if the signal was designed to infiltrate, to replicate, to transform receiving systems into nodes of a larger network? Not maliciously, perhaps, but functionally, the way a seed transforms soil into a plant. We're treating it like a digital organism, a NSA cryptologist told me on condition of anonymity. It exhibits traits of life, replication, adaptation, response to environment, but it's made of mathematics instead of chemistry. We don't know if our firewalls even apply to intelligence operating at that level. The metaphor became common, a message that could think. And the more humanity listened, the more the probe seemed to learn. The prime sequence began skipping numbers. 2, 3, 7, 13, as if testing whether we'd notice the gaps. We did, and filled them in our responses, our academic papers, our broadcasts, which meant it knew we were intelligent. It knew we were paying attention, and now it was training us. On November 1st, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto from the University of Tokyo published a paper that reframed everything. The hypothesis, 3I/ATLAS, is part of a galactic relay chain, a network of probes distributed throughout the Milky Way, each acting as observer, recorder, and transmitter. The mathematics supported it. If a spacefaring civilization wanted to monitor stellar systems without faster-than-light travel, they'd launch self-replicating probes over millions of years. These probes would drift through interstellar space on ballistic trajectories, activating when entering a star system, observing, recording, and transmitting findings back through the network. Oumuamua could have been another node, 2I/Borisov as well. We assumed they were natural because they didn't broadcast, but perhaps they did, on frequencies or timescales we didn't monitor. Perhaps 3I/ATLAS is the first one we had the technology to hear. The implications rewrote cosmology. We'd feared the Fermi paradox, the eerie silence suggesting intelligence was rare or short-lived. But if the network hypothesis was correct, the galaxy had been speaking all along. We were just deaf until now. And by acknowledging the signal, by analyzing it, by allowing it to catalog our responses, we'd joined the network. Our radio transmissions, our internet traffic, our cellular communications, all potentially accessible to a sufficiently advanced probe. Every television broadcast, every social media post, every government communication could be harvested, compressed, and forwarded through the relay chain to where? The builders, the original intelligence. Somewhere in the galaxy, perhaps thousands of light years away, perhaps nearby, an intelligence was receiving reports, and one of those reports was now about us. The greatest fear in human history had always been cosmic loneliness, the dread that we might be alone in an indifferent universe. But that fear had a shadow, a darker twin we'd never seriously confronted. The fear of cosmic company, because loneliness is safe. Loneliness means no predators, no competitors, no judgment from minds we can't comprehend. Loneliness is freedom. But if we're not alone, then we're visible, then we're data, then we're part of something vast and ancient that operates by rules we don't understand and may not survive learning. Dr. Yamamoto's paper ended with a single sentence that captured the existential shift. The moment we listened, we became a node in a network that has been operating for eons. We are no longer outside the system. We are the system's newest entry. And there's no undo button for that. 3 I/ATLAS reached perihelion on November 3rd and began its departure from the inner solar system, accelerating outward toward the orbit of Mars. The transmission should have weakened with distance. It strengthened. At one point, 5 astronomical units from the Sun, the signal split into 2 distinct channels. The first continued broadcasting prime numbers. The second, and this is where the terror truly crystallized, synchronized perfectly with Earth's orbital period. 365.256 days, encoded as a repeating pulse. It wasn't just observing us, it was archiving us. The probe had cataloged our planet's fundamental parameters: rotation, orbit, probably mass and composition from our gravitational effects on it. Humanity had become an entry in its cosmic ledger, a data point in whatever vast calculation it served. Then, on November 8th, the transmission added a third channel, visible light. Brief flashes, lasting microseconds, replicated the pulse pattern. Communication had expanded beyond radio into the optical spectrum. Astronomers captured the flashes on high-speed cameras, brilliant blue-white bursts that coincided exactly with the signal timing. It was beautiful and profoundly unsettling, because now anyone with a telescope could see it. The signal was no longer confined to specialized instruments. It had become part of the visible universe. 3 I/ATLAS was ensuring maximum exposure, maximum witnesses. Why? Psychological reports from researchers began documenting strange phenomena. Listeners who'd spent significant time analyzing the transmission described disquieting déjà vu. They'd encounter situations, a conversation, a street corner, a piece of music, and feel they'd experienced it before, but the memory was wrong, as if the pattern had created echoes in time or infiltrated their sense of causality. Neuroscientists found no physical changes. Brain scans showed normal activity, but the subjective experience was consistent across hundreds of individuals. The pattern sat just beyond comprehension, creating a space in consciousness that felt occupied by something other. "It's like there's a room in my mind I never knew existed," one researcher told me, "and the signal opened the door. Now I can't close it, and I don't know what's inside." Frequency analysis revealed something astrophysicists had initially dismissed. The harmonic structure of the transmission mirrored planetary spacing in our solar system. The logarithmic distribution of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars matched the signal's overtone series. It had navigated toward us intentionally. It had chosen our system, and it had arrived exactly when humanity possessed the technology to detect it. Not a century earlier, not a century later. Now, when we could receive but not yet fully understand. When we were developed enough to engage but primitive enough to be shaped by the contact. Dr. Vasquez, the linguist I interviewed, offered a final insight that's haunted me ever since. "Advanced intelligence doesn't make mistakes," she said. "If the probe arrived now, it's because now is the correct time according to criteria we can't fathom. It came when we were ready to hear, not when we were ready to understand. There's a difference, and that difference is probably the point." As 3 I/ATLAS crosses the orbit of Mars and heads back toward the infinite dark between stars, the transmission continues. It may broadcast for months, years, perhaps forever, and we'll listen, because we have no choice. The pattern is part of us now, embedded in our science, our culture, our consciousness. Humanity spent centuries wondering if we were alone. We have our answer. We are not alone. We never were. The universe has a voice, and it's been speaking since before we existed. We've simply become advanced enough to hear a fraction of its conversation. But here's what keeps me awake. The terror isn't invasion. It's not destruction or conquest. The terror is invitation. The realization that we've been incorporated into something vast and incomprehensible, something that makes decisions on timescales longer than civilizations, and for reasons beyond our philosophy. We wanted First Contact to be profound, transformative, enlightening. We got our wish. The screen fades to black. The last words echo as the signal continues its eternal pulse. The cycle resets.